China tries to throw its weight around by demanding G20 countries don't talk about Hong Kong. Will they stay silent? Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. China has demanded countries around the world not bring up Hong Kong at the G20 summit. But the Hong Kong people have something to say about that. The situation in Hong Kong has become an international embarrassment for the Chinese Communist Party. In early June, 1 million Hong Kongers took to the streets to protest an extradition bill that could allow Hong Kong authorities to send people to mainland China for trial. They saw the bill as a threat to their way of life. Then, after continued protests were met with police firing tear gas and rubber bullets into the crowd, the Hong Kong government announced it would postpone the bill but not officially withdraw it. So, 2 million Hong Kongers took to the streets to protest. People in Hong Kong really don't trust the Chinese Communist Party. So Beijing made some mistakes in how they handled the situation in Hong Kong. And like most of us, they absolutely don't want anyone else bringing up their mistakes, especially not at the upcoming G20 summit in Osaka, Japan.
What I can tell you for sure is that the G20 will not discuss the Hong Kong issue. We will also not allow G20 to discuss the Hong Kong issue.
The G20 is an annual meeting of the leaders from some of the biggest economies in the world. And these other countries might not be too happy about being told what they can talk about. I mean, no one's ever gotten President Trump to not talk about something he wants to talk about, especially on Twitter. And according to U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, Trump is going to discuss Hong Kong with Chinese leader Xi Jinping when they meet during the summit. Ahead of the G20, about 1,500 Hong Kongers spent the day in a marathon march to the consulates of all 20 countries, except, well, China. And while China says Hong Kong is purely an internal affair,
Hong Kong matters are purely an internal affair for China.
Hong Kongers are actually asking for some foreign interference.
Hong Kong is too small for China. We need an international power to help. We need foreign forces to help. It's America.
Outside of the U.S. consulate, protest organizers called on the U.S. to use its influence.
In desperation, we seek your engagement and assistance to fight back this authoritarian regime with us. The U.S. State Department expressed grave concern about the situation, and we cannot be more appreciative of the care. We humbly ask that you could further extend our plea to the other heads of states, and particularly President Xi, during the G20 talks, and stand behind Hong Kong's autonomy.
Representatives from 16 of the G20 countries came out to accept letters from the protesters. Protesters were looking to remind these countries that Hong Kong's situation is an international issue, and they had some thoughts about the Chinese regime's demands. What do you think of China telling other countries not to bring up Hong Kong during the G20?
It's not up to China because it's a international conference.
Oh, of course, China cannot dictate the voices or the discussion in the international society.
I feel like the way that they're doing it is actually showing their authoritarian style.
I don't know how they can do that. If any of the leader trying to raise a question, I don't know how they can refuse to answer or just trying to ignore it.
The more you say you should not bring it up, the more you try to conceal what's happening, it brings even more international notice. Yeah.
That's a good point. Maybe the Chinese Communist Party should try some reverse psychology. They could tell everyone they will totally allow the G20 to discuss Hong Kong. Regardless, the Chinese Communist Party won't be too happy about Hong Kongers going around asking other countries to help liberate Hong Kong, unless they're referring to the People's Liberation Army. The protesters didn't stop with just a marathon petition protest. They also held an online fundraising campaign to buy full-page ads in major international newspapers during the G20. They asked for 3 million Hong Kong dollars. They raised more than 6.7 million in less than 12 hours. So far, they've confirmed ads with the New York Times and the Globe and Mail, among others. Hey, China never said newspapers couldn't talk about Hong Kong, right? Now is not a great time for the Chinese Communist Party. It's not just the massive public displays of civil disobedience in Hong Kong. It's also increased international attention on the persecution of the Uyghurs and organ harvesting of Falun Gong practitioners. If this continues, the Chinese regime may have to change its strategy from demanding other countries don't bring up its human rights abuses to sticking fingers in its ears and going, la la la, I can't hear you. Thanks for watching this episode of China Uncensored. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell, coming to you from Hong Kong. See you next time.